Okay, my friends. So we are going to continue now with our maps and the whole notion of, how did ancient people conceive of their, of their location and so on and so forth, right? And then we want to now. I gave you some specimen, right? But now I want to look at our modern definition of Western civilization, right? So, and in order to do that, I want to start with looking at the ways where in which our modern world was actually created, right? I mean, based on which our notion of the modern map, right, was created. And that was not until the 16th century, my friends, right? That was not until the 16th century where a Belgian historian, right, or cartographer, i.e., somebody who studies cartography, right, cartography, right, somebody who studies maps, right, and one of the first modern maps was created by this Belgian scholar who lived in the 16th century, as you see, 1512 to 1594, which makes it 16th century, right? And his name was Gerardus Mercator, right? So there's an anecdote that we have, right, that in the 16th century, an Italian missionary by the name of Matteo Ricci, right, brought this new map of Europe. Of course, now it is the time of discoveries, and 16th century is the time of quote unquote European quote unquote discoveries, right? As if these places didn't exist and they discovered them, right? Of course, they existed, right? So this Matteo Ricci takes a map of the new world, and including Europe and the new discoveries, right? To China, right? The Chinese, of course, didn't know about Americas yet, right? So they were very glad to learn about Americas, right? But they were offended by the map. Why? Because the map split the Earth's surface down the Pacific Ocean, right? And then China appeared off at the right hand edge, right? But the Chinese, to the Chinese, the center of the world was, of course, China, right? Just as we have decided that the center of our world is Iran now, right? I am saying that only because I'm Iranians, right? I mean, some of you guys knew about that, right? But anyway, that explains my accent, my friends. I have been I came straight from Tehran to New York, right? A long time ago. Most of you were not there. Okay, so anyway, so this Italian missionary guy takes this Belgian map, right, to the Chinese, and the Chinese say, well, we're glad that you have found the Americas, right? But excuse me, we are the center of the world, right? We are the Middle Kingdom, right? Your map definitely has something wrong with it, right? Because it is not showing us the way we would like to represent ourselves, and how we represented ourselves. So anyway, the Mercator, right? I used to say Mercator, and my husband, who's Belgian, right? Who's a mathematician, I think I told you, right? Who's teaching with your classes in the City College, and you might have him for a brilliant mathematician. Yeah. Anyway, he's coming from what we call Flanders, and that is the Flemish speaking part of Belgium as opposed to the French speaking part of Belgium, which is called Wallonia, right? Flanders. So Mercator was coming from Flanders, which in the 16th century, had become sort of a trading region of its own, right? So very well aware of what is there in the rest of the world, right? So this is how, and we're going to see it a bit better in other maps, right? This is how our Mercator map looks like. I wish you to look at what is considered sort of, if this is the Black Sea here and this is Caspian Sea here, I wish you to consider what is Europe, what has become Europe, right? And how big it is, how large it is. And I want you to consider Indian subcontinent, right? And see how smaller it is compared to Europe. And of course, I want you to consider Africa, right? And of course, this is Asia, right? I want you to consider Africa and consider it vis-a-vis Europe, right? And then North America, of course, and South Americas, and so on and so forth. So this is a Mercator map of 1569, right? So I want us to see now a projection of the Mercator map, right? My husband says it is Mercator, it is not Mercator or Mercator. Yeah, okay, guys, Mercator. Mercator, right? So I want you to look at the map. This is the projection of the Mercator map, and this is the map that we are dealing with, right? So again, I want you to see our definition of Europe. This map has been pulled a little bit, so it's a little bit not correct, right? But anyway, this is the Mercator map. I want you to see Africa again, India, right? Asia, of course, right? But we will see what is the definition of Europe nowadays for us, right? Okay, so this is the Mercator map projection, but it is wrong, right? This is the map that we use normally on a daily basis, and it is wrong. Why is it wrong, right? For one thing, right, it has a northern bias, right? Yeah, it shows the northern hemisphere, right, at the top, and the southern hemisphere at the bottom, right? Okay, fine. But this biases the north in some sense, right? So if you do the Mercator map, right, without the northern bias, right, and you concentrate on the southern parts of the world, right, this is how things will look like, right? Americas, right, Africa, right, Arabia, and Asia, and down under is no longer down under, right? Australia, right? So this is the bias that we get for one thing about its, about the north and south and whatnot, right? But there's another kind of bias that is taking place here, and that's the bias that does not account for the true territorial sort of extent of our various continents, right? So that I want you to look at Africa again. I want you to look at the measurements, right? Americas, North Americas, Europe, right? I want you to look at the measurements, right? Compare Africa to Americas and so on and so forth. And then I want you to look at how big is actually Africa, right? How big is Africa, right? And now you will see how big is Africa, right? It contains most of Asia, right? Most of Asia, um, Japan here, right? I'm sorry. It contains, well, the UK becomes the island of Madagascar, right? And you see from here, right? The United States, right? Europe, right? India, Europe, India, Japan, and China, right? And look at it, almost the whole world. The other surfaces of the earth can be incorporated into Africa, right? One of the greatest pieces of land, of course, that we have, therefore, in our modern world and our map, right, is the map of Africa, where we kind of, all of us kind of sort of, one way or another, fit into it, right? South America is missing here, right, for one thing, right? Okay, my friends. So, and then I want us to go to the map of the modern world, and and that's when I want to discuss what is east and what is west. So already you see the biases that are inherent, right? Really inherent in our depictions of the world, right? In other words, like, to some extent, you can argue like our map of the world is fake news, right? And it has been with us, right, for almost 600 years, because it does not reflect the true dimensions of the worlds that we occupy, right, on this earth that has taken millennia to form, and continents that have taken millennia to form. Before we finish with this part of the sort of lecture videos, I want to go back again and to our module 1, yes, and I want us to consider, let's see, according to Greeks, okay, what I actually wanted to discuss with you, and we can do it here or here, it doesn't matter, right, is continents, right? And if we go into our continents and I ask you how many continents there are, right? You will tell me, look at the number on the lower hand side of your screen. 6, right? 7, right? Again, 6. What else? Right? But 6. 5. Okay? So, depends on how you count, right? You want to count Americas as 1, you get 1 number. You want to call Africa, Eurasia as 1, you get another number. You want to call Europe, Asia, you get another number as a continent. But the definition of our continent, of course, we know, is a landmass such as Australia, right, in the lower right hand corner, right, a landmass that is surrounded by water, right? One of the first things that we can realize on this map, right, is that Europe, right, is not surrounded by water. So Europe is really not a continent, right? And even if it is a continent, right, if we want to consider it a continent and break it, right, depending on where you break it, right? I mean, of course, this is again a Mercator projection, right? I think of the world, right? So again, Europe is bigger than what we call the subcontinent, i.e., India. Although that India has, well, as much, although India is not a continent either in the strict sense of the word. But anyway, so Europe and Asia, you can get together, you consider Eurasia, Africa, Americas, right, Antarctica, and you can, so this is the way our world is organizing itself, right, my friends? So, so now going back to our video lecture, okay? So we know that our representation of the world, the very representation of the world, is skewed, right? Yeah. So you see what it means to sort of, begin to think, my friends, right? Yeah. When we regularly discuss Africa, right? We should know Africa is one of the greatest continents, right, on earth, in its extent, right? And as we will see, one of the first civilizations of the world, right, took place in Africa, in Egypt, right, around the Nile, right, and there is much else that is skewed in our representation of the world and our representation of the others in our world, right? In a world on which we all, right, started to step together, our ancestors, right, and so on and so forth. Okay, so I want to stop here, my friends, because I want to start another session, and that would be the video on our modern world and the map of the modern world, right? So it's been fun. I'll talk to you in another session. Bye.